Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. The Hearthstone Rise of Shadows nerfs are here, although this nerf meta is going to be a pretty temporary meta, because in just less than 2 weeks we're going to get some buffs for mech cards and stuff, so this is a temporary state of affairs, and this meta is not actually even going to stabilize completely. Nonetheless, I get a lot of questions about, okay, what should I play now in this new meta? What is good right now? How have things changed with Rogue getting nerfed so hard? So I figured, now that we have a few days of data, I'm going to take a look at what are the best performing archetypes right now and what do I expect is going to perform best in the coming week and a half, before the new buffs are going to redo the meta again. So, the top 7 performing decks for the Rise of Shadows post-nerfs meta to climb to legend. And at number 7 I have Murloc Shaman. Actually, according to statistics, Murloc Shaman is currently the best performing deck in the rank 1 to 5 bracket. This was to be expected. Rogue was really a deck that was holding Murloc Shaman at bay, and with Rogue gone, Murloc Shaman just came out in force. But Murloc Shaman is still a deck. It's a deck that can snowball very quickly, it's a deck that can win games very fast, just Murloc buffs, boom boom boom, everything is exploding everywhere. But it's also a deck that has some clear significant weaknesses, and it's a deck that can be targeted. So while it has had very good success in the first couple of days after the nerfs, I don't expect it to become the best possible deck in the long term. These kinds of builds that run a little bit more top end, Swamp Queen Hagatha, Hagatha the Witch, Shudderwock, these builds have a bit more of a game against stuff like Control Warrior that's otherwise just crushes your faster, more aggressive Murloc Shaman decks. So I expect these types of builds of Murloc Shaman to have the best shot in the long term. And yeah, with Rogue nerfed, Murloc Shaman is definitely a much better option right now than it used to be. Another deck that has been performing extremely well in the first days after the nerfs is Bomb Hunter. Well, Bomb Hunter is it's a very straightforward, pretty powerful, pretty aggressive deck. It can challenge also these slower decks, it can really take on warriors, for example, which is something that many aggressive decks fail to do. But even though Bomb Hunter is currently one of the best performing decks, it too has its weaknesses and it can be targeted. And when you're playing against stuff like Murloc Shamans, Warlocks, Token Druids, some of these other fairly aggressive decks, then Bomb Hunter, it's not terrible against them, but it definitely can have issues fighting against other aggressive decks. And I expect those lists to be further refined and Bomb Hunter to have some trouble in these matchups. Right now though, this is one of the best decks to play, but I expect it to go down a little bit. At number 5 I'm recommending Secret Hunter. Secret Hunter has proven to be a fairly strong archetype. The secrets can really mess up a lot of game plans. And one of the upsides of Secret Hunter is that it's not really terrible against anything. It might not be super favored against anything either, although it is pretty good at wrecking mages, for example. But this is one of the decks actually at the moment that has one of the most steady matchup spreads. So that means that with Secret Hunter, you always have a game when you go into a match. At number 4 I have Warlock. Warlock is just a very solid archetype. Magic Carpet Zoo still seems to be the one that's favored over the Mech Zoo. That will be very interesting to see what happens when the mechs are getting buffed and Snip Snap is going to come into the game. Then what's going to happen with the balance between these. But in this interim metagame, Warlock, Magic Carpet Zoo, still a great option to climb. Strong against lots of other aggressive decks because that Carpet and 1-drops can just take board control against pretty much anything. Has weaknesses against Warrior, but it has Archville and Rafam, and if you can find your Archville and Rafam early against Warrior, you even have a game in those matchups. At number 3 I have Bomb Warrior. I expected Bomb Warrior to be better than Control Warrior with Archivist Elysiana getting nerfed, but Control Warrior has found ways to go around that nerf and still be very successful. That is not to say that Bomb Warrior isn't good. Bomb Warrior is good. It has the Warrior removal abilities, Warpaths, Brawls, just a lot of power in this archetype to remove things, and it has threats in the form of the bombs. so it is still a major player in the game. At number 2 I have Token Druid. Token Druid has really been able to improve its performance after the nerfs, and I think Token Druid is one of the most promising archetypes in the long term. This is one of the top performing lists right now, but once we have the mech buffs, I have much more faith in a mech based Token Druid. I expect this archetype to see a radical change in its composition towards more mechs when the buffs are going to come, but in the interim meta, this type of build still seems to be the one that's performing the best. Finally, at number 1, the deck that I recommend the most for climbing is Control Warrior. I had some trouble finding a Control Warrior list that I really liked. I mean, this is the list that I recently played. I had more than 80% win rate playing this. It was just crushing the opposition left and right. But the most popular lists on HS Replay, even though they have good win rates, I was not quite completely happy with them, because they didn't have tools like Unseen Saboteur, for example, and that means that those deck lists are vulnerable to combo decks, whereas this one is much more capable of dealing with all sorts of threats. I admit that this build runs the Geppetto Joybus Barista Lynchen combo, which isn't strictly necessary, so you don't have to have quite as many legendaries as this to make it work. You could also have like another Big Game Hunter or another Super Collider and a Faceless Manipulator in this. That would work out just fine. The key thing is that you want to have a wide variety of threats when you're playing Control Warrior. I think you really want to have a silence effect in the deck at the moment. You really want to have the Unseen Saboteur in the deck at the moment. And many of the most popular lists are not doing that. And that means that many of the most popular lists, they are very good at beating Token Druids, 2 Warlocks, Murloc Shamans, the stuff that's up there right now at the first days after the nerfs. But once we have a little bit more better formed control and combo decks, as the lists become more fine-tuned, those early lists that are now at the top of HS Replay, they are not going to be able to answer those threats, whereas this list is. And with Geppetto it's also a lot of fun to play. Those were the 7 top archetypes to play to Legend at the moment. We have this interim meta for a week and a half, and I expect that a couple of changes will come during that time. So honorable mentions go to Cyclone Mage. Cyclone Mage, well, if you hit your evocations and your mountain giants and your conjurer's callings and boom 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 boom, you feel the board on turn 4, yeah, that's really good. It just doesn't happen all the time. Overall, Cyclone Mage is a reasonable deck. It has incredible high rolls, but it also has its downsides and its low rolls, and it's held in check by aggro a little bit at the moment. So over a longer period of time, its win rate is not quite as high as to be recommended as a top deck to climb to Legend. And then there are 2 archetypes that I believe are going to become very significant players within the next week and a half. There's Midrange Hunter and there's Dogwaggle Rogue. Both of these decks show a lot of promise. Both of these decks or archetypes still show a lot of different types of lists. There's a lot of innovation going on around these. There are lots of attempts to make them work. Many of them already work to an extent. But I can't really say what is going to be the best take on these yet. There's just so many alternatives to choose from, so many different paths that are being taken. Like with Midrange Hunter, there are these Dire Frenzy Julesyn type of lists. There are also lists that cut the Julesyn altogether, try to be very much faster. They even got Dire Frenzy. Some of them run stuff like Savannah Highmane now that it's not getting sapped every turn anymore. So there are so many cards that are being changed in Midrange Hunter and in Dogwaggle Rogue at the moment that I cannot tell what is the list that is going to have the staying power. But I think that in the next week we're going to have top tier lists of both of these archetypes. That's my take on the metagame at the moment and on the top decks to climb to Legend, if you still want to climb to Legend here at the end of May. And so we're going to get the mech buffs in the early days of June, and meta is of course going to change again. Those buffs are so significant and there are so many cards that are being changed that it probably takes at least a week to be able to say much about it. But I'm really looking forward to that one, and in the meantime, these decks should carry you to good results. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel for more.